What's going on, fam? Commander General Yahanna here. Had to jump in here with you on another one. Let me tell you something about this one I jumped in here with you on. This is a particularly evil thing going on here that's gone on for a while, and it's a part of your Black and Latino life. What I'm about to reveal to you today is part of your life, and you never even realized it was part of your life, and it is more proof on why you need prophets of God to see through the madness that has gone on. Now, you know how everybody has heard this before. You've heard many times black people say that black people have to stop complaining. Black people have to stop, blaming the white man. Black people have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
I am the first person in the history of my family to receive my bachelor's degree from Syracuse University and also my master's degree from Columbia University. I'm now a contributor to several reputable online resources and will publish my memoir in May. My name is Rob Smith. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and a proud Black conservative. I grew up in the working class community of Akron, Ohio, and was raised by a single mother who was, yes, on government assistance for a small point in time. Like many who grew up in Akron, Ohio, I attended some of the lowest performing and underfunded schools in the neighborhood. I graduated from high school near the top of my class and decided to serve my country as an infantryman in the United States Army, including a deployment to both Kuwait and Iraq. I credit the time that I spent in the Army with building the unshakable belief that I have in myself that I am not a victim, that there is nothing that I cannot achieve, and that I am in the best place I could possibly be in to do this, which is the United States of America.
You know what I mean? Other groups do it, Asians do it. Other people come here, can't even speak the language, and they succeed. And this is known. Your preacher says it, your politician says it, business leaders say it. It's said all, your grandmama says it. It's said all the time. Now, when you came up on me, I said the opposite. I said you got to stop blaming black people for everything going wrong with them, that they shouldn't be blamed for anything. Everybody that's seen these shows and watched these shows know that I say that all the time, that you got to stop blaming them. We got to stop blaming ourselves. Well, brothers and sisters, today, I'm going to bring out the proof on that. Some of you going to know about this. This came out a while ago. It came out really about 8 years ago. But just last year, it's gotten a revival because of the high rates of suicide that has gone on in certain communities. And what I'm talking about is the model minority.
Boy, I'm sure glad we left the pool party, Trey. Math homework is way more fun.
Computer, that's the first thing you've ever said that doesn't add up.
You're so studious, Computer. Trey, you could learn a thing or two from his people. They're very wise.
Whoa! Time out! Here we go again. TV and movies are rampant with Asian stereotypes, especially the idea that Asian people are some kind of model minority. Smart, successful, polite, obedient, and of course, inherently good at math.
Model minority is a term, believe it or not, that was created by the United States government. They created this term to do something super dastardly to black people that you would never imagine was done. What they did was, after World War II, and I'm gonna read some excerpts from one of the writers that wrote about this. During World War II, or let me say this, prior to World War II, Asians was treated like garbage in the United States. Prior to World War II, Asians were considered filthy, disgusting. They talked and treated them like they were garbage. They were called, they had all kind of derogatory terms, which I'll read also. After World War II, that began to change. After World War II, they all of a sudden became favored. You know how today they walk around and say Asians are smart, Asians do good in school, they're great with mathematics, they higher achievers, they're some of the smartest people in the world. What you don't know is that every bit of that is a lie. Listen to me good. all of it is a lie, and all of it is propaganda that the government put out to destroy black people during the 60s and to fight against their enemies, the Russians at the time.
Ernie, Wanda, welcome to our home.
Thank you. You know what, Ed? I think you and I got a couple of Olympic gymnasts on our hands, huh?
That would be great. So long as she keeps up her grades. Isn't that right, honey? Now, we both know it takes more than a somersault to get into Harvard.
I agree. That's right, baby girl. You see, she's only 5, but she's learning Spanish right now. Baby girl, why don't you razzle dazzle us with some Spanish? Listen to this, Ed, listen.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Ah, you know your numbers too, huh?
Well, actually, he's been fluent for about a year.
No.
Isn't that right, son?
Sí, papá. Voy a estudiar en España algún día. ¿Y tú?
Sí.
Sí.
The boy's 4 years old. That's impossible. Imposible. Wow.
Trust me, Shannon, you don't. Now, I would trade my family for yours any day.
Say adios.
I'm not Brianna.
I mean, this thing is so dastardly, like you cannot even believe, man. I mean, they actually put together a full-out propaganda brainwashing program to make you look lazy, to make you look worthless, to make you look like you complaining and not doing what you should do, while at the same time making Asians look like they're smart and intelligent, and that they are higher achievers, and that they're good citizens, and that they don't ruffle feathers, and that they're peaceable people, and that they do the right thing all the time. They put that propaganda out, and it worked. It worked, which shows you, before I pause and go to the other part, which shows you that the way black people and Latino people are looked at in this country was by design of the government. They designed it to be that way. It didn't just happen overnight. They designed it that way. And as a result, you are looked at and hated all over this country and blamed for everything that happens to you. But Asians are looked at and taught to be looked at as though they are righteous and humble and hardworking and intelligent and the model citizen, when all of it is propaganda and a lie. Check this out.
In the mid-1800s, Americans were so hostile to Chinese people, the country passed laws banning Chinese immigration and denying their freedoms. They were stereotyped as a lazy, opium-addicted, menacing horde dubbed the Yellow Peril.
And your old Uncle Sammy didn't stop there.
Uncle Sammy!
Yeah, Uncle Sammy hasn't been such a cool uncle. Because of anti-Asian racism during World War II, the United States interned Japanese Americans in concentration camps.
Hey, it's our Japanese friend Kenji from up the street.
Oh, that's not your friend. That's a spy. He wants to kill Americans.
Uncle Sammy, why didn't you do that to German Americans in World War II?
Yeah, I wonder.
Because they're white.
But all that changed when the U.S. needed to suck up to its Asian allies during the Cold War. See, as the Soviet Union rose to power, the U.S. worried that Soviet propaganda was making communism sound dynamite.
America is so racist, am I right? It's like, hey, USA, cut it out.
Woof. Guess I better have mercy on these Asians.
So America embarked on a propaganda campaign to tout Asian American success stories. The State Department highlighted Asian American artists, politicians, and even sent an all-Chinese American basketball team on tour overseas.
Conservatives went on to use these claims to justify making cuts to many essential social programs for African Americans and other disadvantaged minority groups.
They were even used to argue against civil rights.
Come on, you don't see computer complaining about fair and equal protection. Asians earned their place in this country. Why can't you?
What? No, Uncle Sammy, you helped Asian people. Why can't you see that?
They needed their allies during the Cold War to help them out. So to get their allies to help them out, they started portraying Asians as being hardworking and fair and all of that. Meanwhile, later on during the 60s, they used it to destroy black people. Check this out, y'all. I mean, this is just out and out amazing. Between 1940 and 1970, something remarkable happened to Asian Americans. Not only did they surpass African Americans in average household earnings, but they also closed the wage gap with whites. Many people credit this upward mobility to investments in education. But according to a recent study by Brown University, one of the top universities in the country, economist Nathaniel Hilger, schooling rates among Asian Americans didn't change all that significantly during those 3 decades. Feel that, people. 3 decades they were pushing the propaganda that Asians were smart and invested in education and was serious about educating their children. When they said nothing changed, none of that was true. Instead, Hilger's research suggests that Asian Americans started to earn more because their fellow Americans became less racist towards them, people. So in other words, they're telling you directly, white racism is completely tied to your economic situation. Prior to World War II, they hated them and didn't care anything about them. So they talked about them like a dog, treated them horrible. But when they needed their allies, when they needed them as allies, then they turn around and said, oh, wait a minute, let's start treating them a little bit better. They started treating them better, and before you know it, they start cutting the racism down, and before you know it, they started to increase in wealth. They could have done the same thing with blacks and Latinos. You wonder why blacks and Latinos are still on the bottom. You sitting up there saying, because black people don't listen, because black people are always getting high and committing crimes, because black people this and Latino people this. When you don't even realize that they are doing those things because they are being denigrated by the government and you are being blindsided. They're doing these things because they're being taught that they are these things. And so they start to become them things. It's in movies and all that. Y'all seen the movies Gremlins. In that movie Gremlins, those gremlins were portrayed as black people in the bar, having card games, shootouts with one another. Don't feed them after dark. Then he gives them fried chicken. They multiply like crazy. Those gremlins, which in German means little devil, a Steven Spielberg movie. That movie was totally about black people and how destructive they are. It was a brainwashing program. They did the same thing with the movie Coming to America.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, lived a handsome prince.
I want a woman that's going to arouse my intellect as well as my loins.
Where will you find such a woman?
In America.
So he traveled across the sea to the land of opportunity.
That was another brainwashing program to put other nations above you.
I am Akeem.
Nice to meet you, Akeem.
Oh my goodness, it is you! Greetings, Your Highness.
Who was that?
Eddie Murphy, in a comedy fable of royal romance.
When I look at these contestants for the Miss Black Awareness pageant, I feel good.
Apparently these are the best women Queens has to offer. Pick one and let's go home.
And it is why all these nations get above you, and then you end up constantly on the bottom, and then you do what they say to do. You blame yourself. You blame other black people. You blame the stereotypes about us. When this is exactly what they did to the Asians before World War II. Before World War II, and I'm going to read it. Let me read a little bit more, matter of fact. Okay? He said nothing changed for decades. America just became less racist. Okay? He said the real secret to Asian American success was not education. It had nothing to do with them going to school and all these, passing SATs. It had nothing to do with that. How did that happen? About the same time that Asian Americans were climbing the socioeconomic ladder, they also experienced a major shift in public image. At the outset of the 20th century, Asian Americans had often been portrayed as threatening, exotic, and degenerate. Now, does that sound familiar to you? That's how black people are portrayed. That's how Latinos are portrayed. That's why Donald Trump ran on the code that Latinos were all rapists. They've been saying for years black people committing all the crimes. They've been pushing this propaganda, and which shows you that propaganda affects people, and propaganda makes people operate in a certain way. And this is what's happened to us in this place, man, which is so sad and so evil and so dark to do something like that to people, man. To take one group of people and to then push propaganda to raise them up, and then take another group of people and push the opposite propaganda to drag them down into the grave.
You know, Bernie, I keep telling my kids, it's not enough these days to be in honors classes or do well on the SATs.
I think they should do away with the SATs.
That's teenager for you, huh?
Defend your position.
Dad, the SATs are widely considered to be a culturally biased assessment of scholastic aptitude. And studies have shown that they aren't an accurate test of achievement or how a person does in college.
But you still planning on getting a perfect 1600, correct?
Touché.
You must tell me, how in the world do you keep your kids so disciplined? Honestly. Do you whip them?
No. Caning them.
I like the work ethics, man.
How about some music?
Love some. Yeah, some music.
Susie, this is so lovely. Next time you have to come to our house for dinner. Right, honey?
Huh? Come to our house.
Was it the two spades?
Jordan, that's okay.
The King of Hearts?
Ed, Susan, truly, thank you. On behalf of my family.
7 of diamonds?
Get in the car. Okay. I'm sorry. Good night. It's okay. I got you a club.
Good night. Good night, Bernie.
10 of diamonds. 10 of diamonds. Jordan, his doggone magic trick. You see those kids play those instruments?
Honey, our kids are not in a competition.
Juan, I gotta prepare our kids for the real world. You saw that 5-year-old boy. He spoke Spanish. Our kid can't even talk English. From now on, hey, I'm doing something.
Will you teach us Ebonics?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'll tell you one thing. When I get done with it, nothing. When I get done with y'all, y'all be smaller than your sister's mouth.
Possible.
Small Alex.
That's what's happening to you here. And that's how you know you're the chosen people of the Lord. And it's why you know that you need the prophets of the Lord, because your preacher can't, he don't see through none of this. He don't see through none of this. You go to ask him, man, what's wrong with black people today? Well, why are we going through so much? They'll tell you black people don't do what they're supposed to. They'll tell you every word coming out their mouth. They don't listen to their parents. They walk around with their pants hanging down. This and this. They will tell you every propaganda lie that's ever been put out about black people. You'll hear your preachers say it, your black politicians say it, all of them say it. And meanwhile, all of it came out of the State Department to destroy you, and you don't even know it. Check this out. They also experienced a major shift in their public image. At the outset of the 20th century, Asian Americans had often been portrayed as threatening, exotic, and degenerate. By the 50s and 60s, the idea of the model minority had begun to take root. And listen to this part good, fam. Newspapers often glorified Asian Americans as industrious, law-abiding citizens who kept their heads down and never complained. So they portrayed them like, they kept their head down. They never complained. They don't never have a problem. They're the model minority. They're the good citizen. They even made movies about them, the good immigrants. Okay? How the yellow peril became the model minority. The same way they call black people niggas, they used to call Asians the yellow peril is what they used to call them. That was their so-called term of to derogatize the Asians. They would call them the yellow peril. And brother, that's exactly what we've gone through in this country, man. But instead, they started making them like they were the model citizen. They should get into Harvard University. But meanwhile, all of this was a propaganda against us. For them and against us. For them, because it helped them with their relationships with their Asian allies when they were fighting the Russians, whom they needed, which was all over there in the South China Sea. So they needed them Asian countries down with them, while the Russians were on the other side. They were battling up against them. So they needed to have that Asian image in America to look like it was a wonderful, wonderful place. And I'll bet you we don't know about it, but I'll bet you they imported tens of thousands of them. I'll bet you that's how the door got open for them to get in here and set up all these Chinese restaurants and all these different businesses that they got over the top of us. They destroyed us with the propaganda and raised them up. This is diabolical stuff, man. Diabolical stuff that you can't see in the open. Diabolical stuff that they do in the darkness, man. That only the Lord can really bring home how much they do this to us, man. Okay? Here's what it says. Asian Americans had often been portrayed as threatening and exotic, right? Newspapers often glorified, later on, they often glorified Asian Americans as industrious, law-abiding citizens who kept their heads down and never complained. See that? They kept their heads down. They never complained. They're the whiz kids of society. When all this was propaganda, man. All of it was propaganda. You hear me? All of it was propaganda to brainwash us. To brainwash them and to brainwash us. Check it out. To combat racism, minorities in the United States have often attempted to portray themselves as upstanding citizens, capable of assimilating into mainstream culture, something that black people tried extremely hard to do. Martin Luther King was one of the main ones who tried to bring us together and to try to, assimilate us with their empire. Asian Americans were no different. Wu writes. Wu is the writer of this is an excerpt of an interview with Wu. Wu being the writer. Writes, some, like the Chinese, sought respectability by promoting stories about their obedient children and their traditional family values. The Japanese pointed to their wartime service as proof of their shared Americanness. We did the same thing. We would point to, the fact that we fought in the wars and Civil War and World War I and World War II. We did what the Asians did, we did also. We all begged the empire to love us and accept us and make us a part of the empire. Okay? African Americans in the 40s made very similar appeals. But in the post-war moment, Wu argues it was only convenient for political leaders to hear the Asian voices. You hear that? After World War II, they started listening to the Asians because it was politically beneficial for them. They needed them Asian countries. They needed all them Asian countries to be their allies and to not join the Russians. So it was convenient for them. It was better for them to listen to them Asian voices, which means what? They did not listen to the black and Latino voices. They did not listen to us. Okay? They could care less about our voices. Okay? The model minority narrative may have started with Asian Americans, but it was quickly co-opted by white politicians who saw it as a tool to win allies in the Cold War, like we bring it out. Discrimination was not a good look on the international stage. Embracing Asian Americans provided a powerful means for the United States to proclaim itself a racial democracy, meaning they wanted to portray themselves like we open to all races, we love all people, when it was only for their own political propaganda, man. Okay, and we're gonna get up to where how it was used against us. It was so used against us. Okay. Embracing Asian Americans provided a powerful means for the United States to proclaim itself a racial democracy and thereby credentialed to assume the leadership of the free world. Wu writes, stories about Asian American success were turned into propaganda. It was turned into propaganda. By the 60s, anxieties about civil rights movements caused white Americans to further invest in the positive portrayals of Asian Americans. Now check that out. Meaning, while this was going on, black people start asking for civil rights, civil rights, civil rights, civil rights. As black people start asking for civil rights, it made them push the Asian propaganda story even more. Now, why would they do that? Why, when black people is fighting for civil rights, they working against black people, claiming to love black people, and Kennedy rolling with Martin Luther King and trying to promote Martin Luther King and bring in the whole civil rights movement. Meanwhile, the State Department on the other side and the rest of the Edomites were investing in pushing the Asian story. Why would they do that? Why? How did the two match together? I'm sure you've picked that up by now. The image of the hardworking Asian became an extremely convenient way to deny the demands of African Americans. Ain't that something, Mark? That's diabolical.
Conservatives went on to use these claims to justify making cuts to many essential social programs for African Americans and other disadvantaged minority groups.
They were even used to argue against civil rights.
Come on, you don't see Computer complaining about fair and equal protection. Asians earned their place in this country. Why can't you?
What? No, Uncle Sammy, you helped Asian people. Why can't you see that?
Meaning they see you asking for civil rights. They see you trying to work to get your rights in America. And so what did they do? They pumped up the Asian story as a means to deny you that right. And let me tell you something. If you got any sense, you should know that right now in 2020, this propaganda is higher than it's ever been before. Black people are portrayed as criminals and evil and drug addicts and whores all over this country, and portrayed like they always want to hand out. Mitt Romney even said it when he was running for president. He said they always looking for, some people are always looking for a handout. It's always the story when Republicans run. They always run off of, we're going to cut out this welfare fraud, like black people are stealing everything. You know what I mean? That we got to cut the budget, all this spending. That's why they say we against all this spending, that the Democrats want a welfare state. That's all propaganda that comes out of the State Department to make you to denigrate blacks and Latinos and natives in this country. And it's diabolical. It's amazing and diabolical. Here's what it says. The image of the hardworking Asian became an extremely convenient way to deny the demands of African Americans. As Wu describes in her book, both liberal and conservative politicians pumped up the image of Asian Americans as a way to shift the blame for black poverty. Damn. If Asians could find success within the system, politicians asked, why couldn't African Americans do it? If the Asians could do it, why can't black people do it? Meanwhile, the Asians hadn't even been doing it. They said for 3 decades, nothing changed. But they just made the image look like they were hardworking, humble, quiet, that they were great in math, that they were successful, when none of it was true. All of it was just BS to gas you up into thinking that they were doing great and that they were intelligent and they found success in the system. And black people got to stop complaining. The black people got to stop. They got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and then they'll be added as part as well, when all of it is a lie. All of it is a lie. The truth is, it was used against you to make you hate yourself and to make you believe that your problems was your fault. And black women in these churches say it all the time. Black men are dogs. Black men don't take care of their children. Black men, I bet you when the statistics really come out, I bet you black men been busting their ass trying to be the model father, trying to be the model husband. And meanwhile, this place has wrecked their lives with propaganda, man. You've been moved on, man, in dark, dark ways. And that's why you got to come back to the Most High, man. You got to come back to the Lord. You got to find your way back to your records in that Bible and put back on the whole armor of the Most High. Because the things they doing to you in the dark, man, that's why the scriptures say we walk not by sight, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of the Most High. Because if you went by sight, the propaganda would brainwash you. You would hate your own people also. And many of our people do hate our own people because the propaganda has worked so well, man. And that's why I tell you, you got poor leadership in the black and Latino community. No, strike that. You got horrible leadership in the black and Latino community. Horrible leadership that allows you to be trampled over by this kind of propaganda and how much it destroys us, man. And here's the thing. There are tons of movies, books, and videos out concerning the effect of this on Asians. Like, it's tons of records on how this affected them and how much pressure was put on them and how much they done went through over this. But very little is even exposed to the black community about how this was directed against them, how this was used to degrade them. This whole attitude, once again, this is real witchcraft. The whole attitude of black people if other people, nations could do it, why black people could do it? And then black people came up with the solution themselves. They said we do it because we don't stick together. We do stick together. We just don't even realize how much propaganda is being done to us. So to us, in our mind, we try to figure out, well, why is it we're not able to do what they're doing? And we come to the conclusion that, well, it must be that we don't stick together. It's none of that. It's an actual government program working against you to destroy you. You understand? And that's what you don't understand, which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy that they would work that way and to deal with that they would work so evilly against you. All right. So like you said, they said, so the politicians and everybody says, so why can't African Americans do it? And here's what Wu said. Wu said the insinuation was that hard work along with unwavering faith in the government and liberal democracy as opposed to political protests were the keys to overcoming racial barriers as well as achieving full citizenship, she writes. Imagine that. Think about that for a second, y'all. The insinuation is that hard work. How many times have you heard stories of Edomites saying, my grandfather, he worked hard. If you come to this country and you work hard and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Ben Shapiro recently said that on Joe Rogan's show. Recently on Joe Rogan's show, Ben Shapiro said the exact same damn thing.
But I don't think white people or Jews or Asians have a monopoly on valuing education or a monopoly on hard work or punctuality or anything. I think that black people have exactly the same capacity as any people of any other race to do all of these things, and those are the preconditions for success. You either meet them or you don't. I mean, that's true for everybody.
But you clearly see that there's a big difference between people coming over here willingly and doing so in order to better their lives versus someone whose ancestors were dragged over here to be sold as property, and then dealing with the repercussions of that being your family history and red line laws and all the other things that were put in place to sort of keep them in very specific areas, which to this day remain crime-ridden, gang-ridden, deeply impoverished communities.
Well, That's true, but the question is how much of that is historic redlining and how much of that is an 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody?
But how much of that 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody is based on him growing up in this fucked up environment where that's what he models, where everything around him is crime and gangs, and you imitate your atmosphere, which what all humans do.
Right, but the answer is there's only one way to break that chain.
What way is that?
That way is to not pick up a gun and shoot somebody.
I think
Meaning
that's a simplistic way of looking at it if you're on the outside of that community and you're not one of those 18-year-old kids that grows up with the incredible influence of all the people around him, and that's all you see.
He said the same thing. He came out and said at some point you got to lift yourself up by your bootstrap. He doesn't know that's either he knows it or he doesn't know that that's government brainwashing and propaganda. You've been held down in this place, man, by so many different devices. It's unimaginable what's been done to you. Why? Because you are the lost 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and there is no place for you in this world. The place for you is in the next world. That's where your place will be. So let's go through it again. It said, insinuation was that hard work along with unwavering faith in the government and liberal democracy, as opposed to political protest. That's why everybody's out running around voting for Joe Biden, because they believe in liberal democracy, as opposed to political protest, were the ways to were the keys to overcoming racial barriers. Wu says this: America in general has had very limited ways of thinking about Asian American. There are very few ways in which we exist in the popular imagination. Meaning the way they exist in the popular imagination, as if they're hardworking, know a lot of math, but that's it. They're not looked at as artists or intellectuals or any of those type of things. They got a limited way that they look at them. Why? Because of the propaganda that was done. Here's what he says. Okay, in the mid to late 19th century, the way through the late 40s and 50s, Asians were thought of as a brown hoarders, imagine that, or as the yellow peril, like I mentioned earlier. There was the sinister, weird Fu Manchu stereotype. Fu Manchu was a stereotype of a greedy, lustful Asian cat that was always trying to sleep with women and get high and smoke opium and was would spout wise, dark sayings and stuff. And this was they made tons of movies about him. And that was part of the bad portrayal of it.
So foolish as to believe that you can oppose the will of Fu Manchu.
A favor, Father. I've never liked the girl. Will you leave her to me?
Wait.
I bring you here a sworn statement from America, Europe, and the East, signed by the men of power in those countries. We know of your desire to build up an empire in which you would command the criminal masterminds of the world. All right. We offer you now this role, if you will become our leader.
I accept your offer. You in your turn must accept my authority and my leadership. My objective is vengeance. The means, death.
But now they live only to serve me.
Christopher Lee playing an Oriental supervillain.
What's the matter with him?
He's not Chinese.
It's a bit overdramatic, isn't it, Commissioner?
And even in the mid-60s, when this was released, the whole yellow peril thing, where anyone Chinese is your enemy, was just a teensy bit wildly racist.
All of that went away when they decided to flip it and make it the other way, which shows you they can take one segment. They so good with their witchcraft that they could take one segment of society and raise it up to the sky, take another segment and bring it down. That's how powerful the apparatus is. And it's also to let you know something else. They control the media, just like this conspiracy theorist been saying, because they couldn't have done this without TV, movies, ads, all kinds of things like that. They could never have done this. And that's why they were able to do it, because they were able to, just like it said in the article, all of a sudden newspapers, all in the newspapers, you had articles, Time magazine, about how Asians were whiz kids. Prior to that, you would have never saw that. You understand? They're the model minority in society. They're great. They're everything. They're good immigrants, man. How they went from being the yellow peril to the model minority. Look how wonderful they are. They're intelligent and great. This was done by propaganda, man. That's how this was done. This was done by propaganda, man. And why? How were they able to do it? Because they controlling the media, which is, of course, is writing horrible, horrible articles about you. About you. Okay? Yet by the mid-60s, Asian Americans had undergone this really arresting racial makeover. Political leaders, journalists, social scientists, all these people in the public eye seem to suddenly be praising Asian Americans out of nowhere as so-called model minorities. Just out of nowhere, they just became beloved out of nowhere. Check it out.
See, as the Soviet Union rose to power, the U.S. worried that Soviet propaganda was making communism sound dynamite.
America is so racist, am I right? It's like, hey, USA, cut it out.
Woof. Guess I better have mercy on these Asians.
So America embarked on a propaganda campaign to tout Asian American success stories. The State Department highlighted Asian American artists, politicians, and even sent an all-Chinese American basketball team on tour overseas.
Forget all that nastiness earlier. America loves our Asian sports heroes.
And in 1965, Congress approved a landmark immigration law that ditched racist restrictions. But it gave preference to immigrants who had training, talent, or skill sets that would benefit the U.S. economy.
Sammy and the Rippers are changing their tune. Borders now open for smart, successful Asian immigrants. Wow, now that I've let all these educated, successful Asians into America, I've got to say, Asian Americans sure are successful and educated.
So America went from a country that despised Asians to one that held them up as a shining example of assimilation. And this self-fulfilling prophecy resulted in the model minority myth.
And the most sinister part of this myth is it was used to put other minorities down. And it's still holding people back today.
Oh, it's our very special
Still
guest
going
star,
on
Professor
today,
of History
y'all.
at Indiana University, Ellen Wu.
Why did I need to use the ladder, Adam? Aren't we on the ground floor?
It's a sitcom thing.
In the 1960s, government officials looked at socioeconomic data from African American communities and contrasted it to the so-called family values and stability of Asian Americans. Now, this fueled racist
played us
claims
against
that
them.
Black people had no one to blame but themselves if they experienced poverty and other social disadvantages.
Tell me you ain't
Conservatives
heard
went on
this.
to use these claims to justify making cuts to many essential social programs for African Americans and other disadvantaged minority groups.
They were even used to argue against civil rights.
Come on, you don't see
Yeah, they were they even used it to say we shouldn't get no civil rights because we ain't no good. The Asians are doing great and doing the right thing, but blacks are not. These people have done deep, diabolical, evil things to us, man.
Computer complaining about fair and equal protection. Asians earned their place in this country. Why can't you?
What? No, Uncle Sammy, you helped Asian people. Why can't you see that?
And the model minority myth hurts Asian people too. If an Asian American student is struggling in school, many teachers assume that they don't really need extra help.
My face, they see an Indian and they see, oh, she'd be a great doctor. And because of that stereotype, I've been expected to live up to that. And because of that model minority myth, I'm still continuing to become a doctor. It's not to say that I won't be happy being a doctor, but it's that I think I would be much more happy if I just followed something from the heart. Many of my teachers haven't been Asian American, so it's hard for them to relate on the same basis that, I face these difficulties at home, trying to cope with my parents wanting me to become a doctor, whereas I want to follow art and English. They realize that, but they haven't gone through it.
The model minority myth applies to a lot more than just what I saw. I didn't necessarily get hurt by the myth, but then it kind of hurt me in a way that it really distorted my image of myself. I might have been funneled into the profession because my dad is a dentist. But I sometimes wonder, is this really what I want to do? I mean, am I really happy? Because, I would have loved to do art. I would have loved to be in art school, and I would have loved to done theater more, and I wish I had the chance to kind of break out of just classical music and just start doing, more music that I wanted to do. But that was so far from what my parents were used to. I just felt like I'd be kind of disrespecting my parents almost and kind of embarrassing them if I tried to do all these talent shows or something like that. And so I always do wonder, what would have happened if I kind of didn't go the stereotypical model minority route by becoming a dentist. And I really do wonder what kind of person I would have been.
In grammar school, high school, I was the model minority myth. Not only did I get straight A's, I was in math team, Latin club. I even did martial arts and and weight training. So I was an all-arounder. I played the piano, I played the viola, and I didn't realize how intense my life was involved around this, being a model. And I also have a little sister, so I had to be a role model to her, and she looks up to me for those things. In college, that sort of all reversed itself, and I felt like I was doing these things, but I have no interest in them. I started questioning myself: is that what I want? Is money, is success, materially, is material comfort what I want in life? And
so it drove them into a position that they were unable to sustain. They started committing suicide. They all depressed, suffering from depression, because they all living a life that Esau pushed them into for them to come up in society. Meanwhile, they couldn't achieve it. They did nothing but the same thing that everybody else did. They became the same amount of doctors, same amount of everything. And meanwhile, you were looked at like you was just a failure. It's propaganda, man, degrading you, pushing you down. It is so massively evil and so deep in the dark, yet it goes on every day in this society. And like the woman brought out, even to this day, it goes on. And now they got tons, like I said, books, movies, all of that, trying to teach these Asians to get out of the stereotype because they being depressed and they sad and they go on these careers and all that. When if black people had been given the same thing, we would have been successful at it. We would have been amazing at it. You understand? They didn't have to be this way. They just hated us for no reason and decided to love them because they were the ones who were going to help them with their Russian allies. Not that we needed Esau's love, but the point being that this happened to us. We are in this condition and in this attitude not because of ourselves, not because of our own fault, not because we have ourselves to blame, but because this was done to us, which is once I knew it in the spirit from just studying the scriptures and examining the Lord's world versus Esau's world. I realized we got to stop blaming us, because even though this had not come out to me yet, I still could tell that this was going on somewhere in the dark. This kind of propaganda has been going on against us for years and years and years, and now I see why. Here it is. Exposed. Let's read it real quick. Two quick ones in the scripture. This is Psalms 74 and 19. 19, 20, and 21. Here's what he said. Okay. David said this. Oh, deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove, talking about David and his people, unto the multitude of the wicked. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. David said, don't never. David was heavy. He said, don't never let us, please, Lord. Don't never let us fall in the hands of these other nations. That's what's happened to us in this empire. We've fallen into the hands of these other nations, and David understood how diabolical they could be when they wanted something. They wanted to get them Russians down, no problem. Destroy black people's image, raise Asians' images up, and who cares what the hell happens to them? Cut them off from their programs and all that. Meanwhile, they spend, and they ain't say everything they spent to help these Asians. I guarantee you, they help them get these businesses up and all that, man. They said they financed basketball teams and all that. You can best believe they financed all kinds of things to create this image. And they still do it today. Why? Because they got to keep the image. And notice the very ones that are here are the ones they fought and won the wars with. The Koreans, the Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, all of them. That's the ones that's here. Okay? Many other Asians not here. Why ain't as many Indonesians here? It ain't that many because they ain't at war with them. Or they don't have to appease them. They already probably on the other side. So they don't care about them. But the ones that they need as allies, they continue to step and crush and destroy us, which is why we keep ending up underneath all of them. You need to come back to the Lord. You trusting in madness. And this is Democrat and Republican presidents. You think because if Joe Biden is now going to solve your problems, man, fix your life, fix black people's lives, when this is the type of things they're doing in the dark against us. Here's what David said. Have respect unto the covenant. He's asking the Lord to respect that covenant, man. To not break that covenant. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be trying our best to respect that covenant and holding the Lord to that covenant. Because without that covenant, we would be destroyed under these nations, man. They do so many dark, evil things against us. We'd be wiped out underneath them, man. Okay, here's what the Lord said. For the dark places of the earth are full of the habitation of cruelty, man. These are the dark places of the earth we talking about here. Dark, deep, dark, slick ass secrets, man. Slick ass shit they doing, man. Okay? That are full of habitations of cruelty. 21st verse. Psalm 74:21. Oh, let not the oppressed return to shame. Don't let us return to shame, man. We done went through this oppression for our punishment. Let us return victoriously, man. Okay? Let the poor and needy praise thy name. And how will the poor and needy praise the Lord's name? The poor and the needy will praise the Lord's name when he destroy all the empires of the world. Like he said, he going to send Christ back. Christ's going to take down all these empires. They're going to be taken down. Why? So that the Lord could be elevated and glorified like he ought to be, man. Because otherwise, he would not get the glory he deserved. Here's what he said. For we wrestle, this is Ephesians 6:12. Y'all know this. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, man. That's what we reading about today, man. Those are the things that we suffering against, man. We ain't wrestling flesh and blood. This ain't our fault. This is people doing massively evil things to the Lord's chosen people in the dark, little beknownst to us, man. Hey, y'all take care, man. I'll see y'all on the next one. Shalom.
Hey. Hey. So I guess you don't have to worry about being late for gymnastics practice.
No kidding.
Is your dad still mad at you?
He's not speaking to me, Vanessa.
But did you at least try to tell
Vanessa, he's not even speaking to me. It's like he hates me. Told my mom he should send me off to boarding school. So, now do you want to switch families?
I want you to stay strong in the spirit of the Lord. Hey, listen, if you like this tape, hit the like button and share it, man. Hit the share button. Everybody share it to their own personal Facebook accounts. Share this video, man, to wake up brothers and sisters all over this earth. Hit the like button. Check me out Monday night. I'm live every Monday night. I bring the heavy hitters in. We do it up live right on this same channel. I'll see you then, Israel. Y'all